everybody. This is William del Pilar, and this is Fired Up, your source for conservative talk. What happens when the floodwaters rise higher than anyone expects? Well, let's start with the night many Republicans never saw coming. In New York City, a place long written off as a progressive stronghold, Mr. Zoran Mamdani, a self described socialist, he didn't just win, he dominated 50.4% of the vote. He beat out both Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. Maybe dominating isn't the best word, but Sliwa, he barely cracked 7%, and that could have helped Andrew Cuomo. Alas, it was not meant to be. Mamdani's campaign turned out the highest voter participation in 5 decades, fueled by promises of affordability, corporate tax hikes, and so-called justice reforms, along with some election integrity issues. That seems to be becoming the norm more and more from both sides. But it wasn't just the message of Mamdani, it was the mechanics, fusion voting, no voter ID, and a confusing ballot design that gave Mamdani a structural edge. Even Elon Musk flagged the system as ripe for manipulation. Elon, you're late to the ball game. Then came New Jersey. Mike Sherrill crushed Jack Chiartarelli by 13 points, and that's a margin that stunned even pessimistic GOP insiders. Democrats dominated mail-in ballots. No surprise. And for the first time, independents and unaffiliated voters made up nearly half of the early returns. Republicans' messaging didn't land, which is obviously a sharp contrast to Trump's stronger 2024 showing in the state. Virginia, a potential earthquake where the GOP fell into the crevices. Abigail Spanberger, a milquetoast Democrat, became the state's first female governor, winning by nearly 15 points. I got to be honest, as a Latino, as knowing many immigrants, this was one of the most disgraceful wins you will ever come across in politics, in her representing women in leadership at the political state level. Why? She never denounced Jay Jones, a man who wished Republicans dead, including their children. He flipped the attorney general seat. And down ballot, the GOP's deficit exploded. 3 seats to as many as 30. Translation, their legislature resembles California's supermajority. And speaking of California, Prop 50 passed with a commanding 63%. Now, what does this do? This hands Democrats the power to redraw congressional districts ahead of 2026. And wait till I show you the map later on in the show. This is a move expected to lock in at least 5 more House seats. Lawsuits are flying, but the power shift is already underway. This wasn't just a blue wave, it was a strategic route. Despite the fact it was only blue states, it was still a blue wave. From deep blue cities to purple suburbs, Democrats overperformed election integrity, and Republicans were left flat-footed. Tonight, we break it all down, along with Nancy Pelosi's retirement and her legacy. But before we begin, do not forget to bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. Follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, and Pandora under the handle Grumblings Media. And if you're listening, my friends, give us a thumbs up. Like and share this podcast or this live stream as we're doing it. We can't grow without your help, and we hope you'll stick around. And feel free to engage. We want to hear your comments, your questions. If you disagree, let us know, and we'll do our best to tell you why we think as we do. And tonight, before I bring my panel on, which is wonderful and beautiful Miss Annette Ross, we have a special guest tonight, Mr. David Giglio, a former congressional candidate from Modesta. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Modesta. And he will tell us a bit about himself, and then we're going to get right on into it. So let me bring our guest here. Well, actually, Miss Annette Ross, our regular panelist, and we got Mr. David Giglio. David, did I pronounce it? Is it Giglio or Giglio?
Giglio.
Oh, God, that's Italian, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. See, as soon as you said Giglio, I'm like, oh, that's Italian. I'm Latino, so I look at everything from a Latino perspective. So my apologies. Tell
No,
us a bit about yourself.
well, and it's Madeira, close to Modesto, but I live in. I'm from Madeira. Yep, my name's David Geely. I'm a small business owner, and I have a small business in Clovis, California. I'm a former congressional candidate. Ran for the now. Well, I guess it's still CA 13, but it just looks a lot different. So I ran for the 13th congressional district back in 2022. Um, Against Adam Gray and John Duarte. And I briefly challenged Kevin McCarthy back in 2024 to send a little message, got sick, dropped out of the race. But yeah, so I've been involved in California politics now since 2021, or yeah, since 2021, early 2020. And there's a lot going on right now. And I know a couple of nights ago has everybody on edge. And there's a lot of reasons why we should be quite honest. And judging by the reactions, I'm
Boy,
not
I
sure,
agree.
I'm not
Before
sure
we
lessons are being learned. So,
get into that though, I saw something interesting on your homepage, and I listened to the interview you had. I forget his name. We both follow him. With he works for Rasmussen.
oh yeah, Mark Hirsch.
Good podcast because he gives you a lot of data, and he's a really down to earth guy. Kind of reminds me of a frat guy who's got intelligence. But that
Yeah.
said, you were talking about some of the polling you had done in
Yeah.
terms of a potential scenario for 2026, but you haven't announced. So, are you going to break that announcement here?
Well, no, I mean, so the district's changed a lot since we pulled the last district. It's obviously something that I'm still thinking about. It's still the district that I would run in. I don't think it's not winnable for Republicans. It's actually probably the only one left after the redistricting that I would say the GOP has a chance of flipping. On paper, it's like it went from it was a Trump carried the old one by 4 points. Now it's anywhere you look, depending on where you look, registration wise, it's a D plus 11, but implied political stuff, it is D. It's like D plus 3, so it's actually still a close seat. But there's a lot of factors at play, and a lot of it has to do with what's going on in the party. So I haven't really made any decisions yet. The last couple ones, runs took a lot out of me and my family,
Oh,
and
it does. Yeah.
and quite frankly, like I said, judging by a lot of the reactions and the responses coming from all over the place on the conservative pundit side, and even from the White House a little bit, I'm not sure lessons are being learned to where we're going to have a really favorable environment. We have to make major changes, so there's still a lot to go there. But I will say this: the Central Valley, despite registration numbers, you can't just look at the partisan stuff. I have 4 years of polling data that strongly shows me people here want to vote for conservatives, but they want to vote for a particular type of conservative, and that's a Trump type of conservative. That's why Trump won in this area in 2024, while Republican incumbents and Republican challengers down ballot lost because they
Right.
didn't offer the same promises and campaign pledges and vision that Trump did. And that's a problem we saw play out across the country last night. That's why, like you talked a lot about
Right.
Mandami. We'll get into it in a little bit. But yeah, so not 100% sure yet. A lot going on. There's going to be a lot of incumbent Republicans right now throughout the state that are going to be fighting to save themselves since 4 guys could be out of a job. I think it's 4, right? Is it 4 or
Yeah.
5?
Yeah, and before we go on, I want to get your comments, but I got to give David some props here, and I hope I don't embarrass him. When I first met David, I saw the pictures and all that, and I couldn't find a modern picture of him today. David's lost a lot of weight, and I
Oh
want to
yeah,
congratulate you on that.
like 100
Yeah,
pounds. So yeah. No, yes, it definitely feels a lot better. So thank you for that.
you're welcome. You got to get to some of those pictures up there. You cost me some work
I know.
time searching out.
I hate taking pictures. So it's like
All right. Before we get into our first major story, Nancy Pelosi, we are all Californians here, and to America, you better listen up. Prop 50 went down hard. Just give me a quick comment because we're going to talk about it later on. But I just want to hear your comments now, real quick. Annette, your initial thoughts.
I mean, I think we all saw it coming. There wasn't anyone that I talked to in the Republican circles that I'm around who thought that we stood a chance, quite honestly, even though they were really trying to get people going door to door. People came to my door, actually, to make sure. I mean, I think our voter turnout wasn't that great, and I'm not surprised, and I find it depressing. But there's going to have to be a way, I think, that we get more people engaged. I don't know how we're going to do that, but maybe so they can understand how this deeply affects their day-to-day lives. But honestly, here's the thing, really what it boils down to, in my opinion, I could be wrong, William, is it's a referendum on Trump. People are upset, and it's their way of fighting back for the people that they think that gerrymandering is happening in other states and it's favoring the Republican side. And here's a perfect way to get back. It's like, it's a vendetta.
Before I get David's comments, that's easy to say, and you're right, but they do it every cycle.
Sure.
McCain was the maverick, beloved by the media. As soon as he announced his run, it was he's a racist. He had an affair. He's this, he's that. George Bush, they demagogued him. Mitt Romney, the dog. They went all the way back to high school. So we as Republicans need to get that out of our head. It's not Trump. It's whoever it is will be the straw man. We're going to talk about that, and I'm sick and tired of not you, Annette, but I'm sick and tired of conservatives thinking it's the individual. It's part of their game plan. People, it's called the Alinsky tactics. Read the damn book. Attack the messenger. Demagogue the messenger. Don't worry about the message. Attack the messenger. Put the whole focus on it. Emotion and hate is the power of the Democrat Party. And look at Trump. Trump was able to do his own version of Alinsky tactics. And that's why they hate him even more. We'll get into it, though.
I want to respond just really quickly, a quick response. I just think
Yes.
what people aren't seeing and what I'm hearing, because I'm around all kinds of different people, is that he has scared Latinos. A lot of my friends that are Latinos that are positive Trump supporters, and they think that they're going to be they are in fear now that they're going to be deported. Seriously, they are though. People
They're
are
lying. Look, I talked to my family, my friends.
Okay.
I've got more Latinos than I think, and they're not in fear of anything. That's called messaging. It's ginned up. You say, I'm a marketer. I learned right away. You say something in enough times, people will start to believe it. I saw a Latino who was an illegal alien, whose parents were illegal, say, look, you don't do it this way. You don't go rioting down the streets and all that. You see, that's messaging. That's part of the Alinsky tactics. And we can talk about it more. Okay. David, let me throw you into the fray in the middle here.
Yeah. Well, like Annette, I wasn't really surprised by it. I mean, I saw it coming. I was telling people for weeks it was probably going to be about a 64, 65-35 result. I don't necessarily believe it was a referendum on Trump as much as it was a referendum on the Republican Party, because Trump, we saw the results from 2024 where Trump actually got a lot more votes in many places, specifically like places like the Central Valley, than down ballot Republicans, because they wanted his vision. People are frustrated that they're not getting the focus on the domestic agenda from Congress, that prices are still very high. I also think it's also a very difficult election in the first place because it's a very niche thing. Quite frankly, I was a teacher. I was a history teacher. I've taught civics. Very few people really understand what even the redistricting means and what goes on. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that these districts get redrawn. There was actually some results saying like upwards of 80% thought that they voting yes meant that they were voting to impeach Trump. So it's a very hard, I mean, we have trouble getting people out for races for Senate, House of Representatives. I mean, in midterms when these are federal races. So this was always going to be very difficult to get people out. And unfortunately, the Republicans are at an inherent disadvantage now anyway from any election here on out, because our base is now the lower propensity voter. The more highly educated upper class voters belong to the Democratic Party now, the ones that are always going to turn out, the ones that understand what they're voting on a little bit more. Republicans now, in the era of Trump, as he's transformed the party, trying to turn it into this working class party, we have a lot of non-high propensity voters who do not show up. It's hard to get them to show up on presidential years, right? Trump has been the only one who's really gotten them to show up. And so it was a very difficult election to win, especially when there were no other races on the ballot. I mean, you're asking people to vote on a niche topic and there's really nothing else on the ballot for them. So it was always going to be difficult. And in California, it's very easy. People just forget to turn in the mailer. It's just not a huge priority. Plus, quite frankly, we had a failure of leadership at the top. And a lot of that goes, I mean, I think that National Party dropped the ball on this. They've been counting on redistricting happening in other states. They didn't think they were going to need California. Now Republicans are backing down in places like Kansas and Indiana. So it turns out that they probably should have focused a little bit more. It's always going to be hard to win, but it's just not that surprising. It's a very complex reason why we didn't get it, but it also highlights just a lot of the same problems that happened across the country.
Exactly. David brings up the most important point. It's a straw man. You're turning the Trump into a straw man. When Trump ran, he got blacks, he got Latinos. His big tent came out. After, if he's not on the ticket, Republicans don't seem to care. So I'm it's like I saw, that's why California is so blue. We're always scared to align ourselves with the party's presidential candidate. Oh, he's a racist. He's this. They just demagogue us, and then we fall back. Oh, that's why we lost. Anyway, let's get the big man, Mr. G. Mangani. Let's get him to weigh in here real quick on Prop 50. Then we're going to talk Nancy Pelosi. G-Man, how you doing? So jump right on.
What's happening?
Jump right on into it. What's your thoughts on Prop 50?
We're all loving the JD Vance look. Look, I agree. It wasn't necessarily a referendum on Trump, but this was a Trump-driven turnout on the left, right? So here's what's happening. So the Democrat turnout and Republican turnout is no longer enough anymore. You need the populist center, right? Or the populist of each side. And the left-wing populists are more motivated to show up because they can stick it to Trump, right?
Yeah.
And they did a poll recently. I think it was the day of or the day before the Prop 50 vote. So it might have been Monday or Tuesday. And the question was, do you think that redistricting in California should be done with independent groups, or should it be done by one party? 90% of those who voted for Prop 50 said, no, it should be done independently. Yet they voted for Prop 50 to put all the lines in the hands of Gavin Newsom for 3 election cycles, or basically 5 years, right? So what's the takeaway? Well, they want to stick it to Trump, right? And they view this as, okay, well, in order to save democracy, we got to do something undemocratic. And I heard that from several left-wing friends. And they said, well, yeah, we just got to do it temporarily. Well, no, this is never going to be temporary. When you give them one little digit, they're going to take the whole arm. And so I think you're going to see this with, state legislative races, state Senate. You're going to see it with city council. I mean, it's just going to go on down the line. They're just going to say, hey, look, it's working so well. Let's just do it again. You think the Democrats are really just going to say, oh, well, okay, we'll go back and give the Republicans back their seats? No, they're not going to say that. And they're going to say, well, we're against J.D. Vance, who's a fascist and a Nazi and all that, just like they called Bush and Romney. So that's my really long back of the napkin take.
Right. So,
wait, William, aren't you going to disagree with him? Because when I say it.
Oh no, because I already disagree. He heard the whole thing. Look, at the end of the day, I have seen 2 dictators. I have seen the tactics that Democrats use. They're okay with creating hatred. They're okay with seeing our side fall to the side in death and then celebrating it. We saw that with Justice Kavanaugh. No protection. I truly believe in my heart Biden was okay and the left were okay if somebody had taken him out. Once we see J. Jones, they elected somebody who wants us dead. So we see they have crossed the line. They don't care anymore. And it's because they're demagoguing. And that's expected. What sickens me is our side uses that as an excuse. Oh, we'll get to the next candidate. They demagogue again, McCain. They demagogue Bush, not 1 cycle, but 2 cycles. They demagogue Romney. And then they demagogue Trump. The reason it's so bad with Trump is Trump speaks his mind. He says it as it is, and he galvanizes the people, and they cannot have that. So they've gone scorched earth, and they will not turn back. They will not turn back. So until we realize we've got to use Alinsky tactics with the truth, we will continue to get slaughtered, not to mention the absentee voting ballot mail-in issues. Now, that in and of itself is going to get worse. These are classic. Every third world country can tell you, saw it, saw it, saw it, saw it, saw it, saw it. Yes, it does exist. What you Americans think it doesn't happen in your country? Are you that stupid? Yes, they are. So until we address all these problems, nothing will happen. Okay, so real quick, let's move on to Nancy Pelosi. So is this the end of Pelosi's reign or just the beginning of the fallout is my thought here. Nancy Pelosi announced November 6th today she will not seek re-election, ending a nearly 40-year congressional career. She was alive, I think, for the first 30. She'll serve out her final year representing San Francisco. She entered Congress in 1987. People, David, you're the youngest of us here, I bet. How old were you in 1987?
I wasn't born yet. I was negative 1 year old. So I was born in 1988. So she got there 1 year before I was able to not vote for her. So
there you go. So she entered Congress before someone on the panel wasn't even born yet. She served. Now, in her defense, as a woman, women have a lot to be proud of here with her. Despite the fact she was a bad representative of y'all, she served as the Speaker of the House, Minority Leader, and she stepped down from the party leadership after the Democrats lost the House in 2023. She retires at the age of 85 with an estimated net worth of $120 million after entering Congress, worth less than $1 million, if I remember correctly. She's amassed all this mainly through her husband, Paul's stock trading, long shadowed by insider trading accusations. They don't have the proof. But even her side says, yeah, that old Nancy. But she's known as both a divisive national figure and a GOP fundraising magnet due to her polarizing track record. I was going to show pictures of her throughout the era, but she was so beautiful early on. And she's just like, oh my God, well, she's like a mannequin now, like the Joker. So I didn't want to disgrace her that way. So I just do it verbiage wise. So David, let's start with you. You're not quite, you're closer to San Francisco than any of us. So what are your thoughts on Miss Pelosi's legacy?
Well, I mean, I could say my thoughts on her are good riddance. I mean, I wish she would take a lot more with her on both sides of the aisle. There's a lot of people in Washington that have been there far too long that need to go. So it's definitely not a loss that I'll be mourning. But I will say this, as hard as it is to believe, her replacement's probably going to be worse, which is Scott Wiener, who's just a total, off the reservation nut job. So it's kind of unfortunate, Nancy stinks, but she's been there forever. She's kind of like half out of it now. But Scott Wiener is somebody I'm really not excited about seeing on the national stage and getting a higher office. So it's unfortunate for the people in that area because, these people live in their luxurious houses with their $100 ice creams. And unfortunately, the area, San Francisco and the surrounding area, Oakland, these places are suffering from years of Democratic rule, up and down, federal, state, local. And it's just unfortunate, because they promise the world to these people and they never deliver, but they use a lot of fear and stuff to keep getting their votes and lies to get their votes. And they have a lot of help in our schools and our media. So it's good she's going, but I'm not excited about seeing Representative Wiener because I don't think he deserves to be anywhere near the House of Representatives.
I agree real quick. And I have no shame. This is how you fight back. You tell the people the truth. Scott Wiener, is it Scott? Representative Wiener is okay, people, with taking your children to the gay pride parade. And he is from San Francisco. He went to the gay pride parade.
He's okay with worse than that. So it's
hold on. He went to the gay pride parade, said, bring your kids. They were grown, ugly, fat, nasty men giving fellatio to one another, then urinating on them. That's how you fight Democrats. You tell the truth. That is who Scott Wiener represents. That is who he wants to see in office. Scott Wiener, his laws that he tries to get passed tend to protect pedophilia. They tend to protect men who prey on minors. And he words it in a way to where, oh, no, he's trying to protect everybody overall. But these loopholes, that's who. People, it's like, that's what you need. People need to know about Scott Wiener over and over and over. Anyway, y'all got me going on a rant tonight here. Let's go to G. G, your thoughts on Nancy Pelosi?
Well, she was elected the same year that I think it was Sweet Child of Mine hit the top 10. I mean, you just think of what's happened since 1987. I mean, I'm all for term limits. I mean, you run the risk of getting someone worse, like you said, Scott Wiener. Uh, but you get corrupt with power over time, right? So Nancy Pelosi, I don't know what her net worth was in the mid '80s, but I'm guessing it was well south of $1 million. And now I think
Yeah.
her net worth is somewhere around 200 million. Now this is after making, let's just say, average $200,000 a year. I think that if you average that out, $200,000 a year. If you pay income tax rate of, let's say, 50%, that's $100,000 a year. How do you get to 140 to $200 million? Is because of insider information. There's a portfolio tracker out there that says follow Nancy Pelosi's trades and you'll make a ton of money. So Nancy's in the know, and I believe that she's about as corrupt will ever come. And I remember when George W. Bush gave a State of the Union, and he basically gave props to her, saying, "Well, this is the first time I can say Madam Speaker of the House," and gave her props, right? And this
Right.
is either on the heels or on the head of her just trashing George W. Bush for basically 2 years until he's out of office, and gave him no room to breathe, right? So and the way she's treated Trump's been terrible as well. So there was a nice brief breathing room of what I think it was 8 years from 2011 to 2019. She was not the majority speaker, and so we were able to breathe with some sanity there. But look, I'm glad to see that she's retiring, and I think it's long overdue.
I think so. Senorita Annette.
Well, I'll make it brief. I mean, the guys did a good job, but I think what bothers me the most about her is I don't actually believe she likes people. I think she snarls at them. I think she looks down upon them. And I think you can sense that about her. And I think that is the worst thing that you can be in politics, a person like that. And her legacy, unfortunately, William, does live on. She's got Sarah Jacobs down here. And now it seems like a congressional seat she's going to have for eternity. And her boyfriend is running too. So, I mean, the legacy, Nancy Pelosi is going to, her tentacles are still in California.
Well, Gavin, I mean, right? Gavin's her nephew. So, I mean,
yes,
he's for president.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, I want to bring up some of Nancy's greatest hits.
Actually, was sort of wanting to see what she looked like younger. I'm sorry that you're not showing that.
Look, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw her, I was like, "That's a beautiful." We were all kids then. I was like, I saw her on CBS News, talking about her, and I was like, she's pretty, And then my dad's like she's a Democrat. Anyway, Pelosi led high-profile but failed attempts to impeach Donald Trump. We do know that. She was criticized for refusing the National Guard. They have her on video, even though they still try to deny that, for refusing National Guard support before the Capitol before the Capitol walk-in riots. Those guys just police. Here you go, open the door. Oh look, target practice. Let me take one of y'all out. That's pretty much what J6 was. She played a pivotal role during Biden's presidency by ignoring the fact the guy could barely walk. But that said, she supported him by enabling the border opening, supporting that, forcing the vaccine on all the federal people in the military, Iran, giving them billions of dollars, even worse than Obama. Again, credited with helping to conceal Biden's cognitive decline. She endorsed Kamala. Remember that Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness? And yet the Democrats shoved Kamala Harris on the people, on their own party, and nobody said a word. So she was complicit in that. COVID, the salon gate, remember? She got busted in the salon without her mask, and then she blamed the salon for releasing the video. The Confederate statues. Now, I was going to pull the Confederate statues and then the pulling of them down. And then when all this happened, and I've never talked about it, but I did research. A lot of those Confederate soldiers or generals had renounced their ways, and they actually contributed to the rebuilding of the society, like in Fort Bragg. General Bragg was one of those, So they never told us the full history. as they tore them down. But her father was one who helped dedicate one of the big ones in Baltimore, and she wouldn't comment on that. Her climate contradictions, it just goes on and on. But the biggest one that this will be her legacy from the conservative side. The history books will write something in, but it will also include her biggest hypocrisy and issue was the stock market and the wealth she amassed from that. Your thoughts, David, on some of her legacy and the hypocrisy of how I see her legacy?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. I mean, Nancy Pelosi represents kind of everything that's wrong with American politics. She's somebody who has just gone there to enrich herself and her friends while promising promising the plebes to make their lives better. And so it's unfortunate because there's so many of them in DC, and that's part of the reason why our government's so broken and why so many people have lost faith and why it's so hard to get people to turn out to vote. I knocked on thousands of doors myself, went to every event, big and small, and that was always the common theme. I made a post about this on Twitter last night. I can't express to you how many people just had been fed up. You have to convince them. You have to beg them basically that, hey, I will try and vote this one time. I will, because people, are just fed up. They don't believe anything they're getting from our government. And that's really it's really unfortunate because that's how you lose a country and that's how you lose a republic. I mean, when people lose faith in the institutions, that's how things go downhill. And we're at that point. And that's why you see a lot of people that are upset right now, even with President Trump. And I've always been a President Trump supporter. They just feel that right now we've been too focused on foreign affairs when there is stuff at home that needs to be dealt with. And so people are just fed up. They want their leaders. Right. And I think we do need more leaders. Listen, I say this all the time. It'd be great if we had more average Joes in Congress because a lot of these people, they never go out. They never speak to the actual people. A lot of these candidates, once you get the backing of the NRCC and this kind of stuff, you don't have to do anything. I mean, they flood you with millions of dollars in TV ads. They're not knocking on doors. And once you're in Congress, those people, they're never going anywhere besides parties and stuff. They just sit there and count on the millions coming in. They don't even mingle with the people they're representing. And a lot of them, like Annette said, resent them. They don't like these people. They don't like. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's not going to Walmart and hanging out with average everyday people. She would never associate with those people, and that's a huge problem.
Right. David brought up a great point. Nancy Pelosi, just for the record, did become her own foreign dignitary / emissary, and with the Taiwan, trying to represent the country at one point. So, real quick, comment on what I've said if you want, but per David's point, he's correct. She was doing the C-SPAN or CNN interview, and she was talking about taxes, and she goes, that's our money, and we're going to decide the best way. She used American taxes and said that's our money, as in her money. Your thoughts on her legacy overall in terms of some of the hypocrisy?
No, I guess I was bored or something because last week while I was working in the background, I put on the Trump-Clinton debates and I watched all three again or listened to all three.
Wow.
And at the time you're like, man, I really hope Trump pulls it off because, things are looking pretty grim. But it's nice to go back and watch it and knowing the results now, you're just, it's more entertainment now. What was interesting is that Hillary kept coming after him saying, you took advantage of the system. You took advantage of the system and you didn't pay taxes and all this stuff, right? And you wrote down your properties and losses and all that. And he kept turning around and saying, well, I did it because you put those laws in place. And if you wanted to do something about it, you would have changed it. But you don't because all your donors put you in that place to keep all that stuff in place. And basically, that's the same story with Nancy Pelosi, right? Like she was reelected so many times in one of the most liberal areas of the country, and there was nothing done in terms of what she preached, right? Let's tax the billionaires more and more and more, but meanwhile, she would just rubber stamp all the tax breaks for them. Right. And look, I am not for raising taxes on anyone. I think there should be a flat tax. Let everyone pay 20% minus some kind of living wage or whatnot. But they do all talk and they say, okay, we're going to go after the rich. And they might do some token like, hey, we'll raise it 1 or 2%. But in the end, they realize, wait a minute, this affects me too. And I want to get rich as well. And all my donors will stop giving. So, I just think it's full of hypocrisy. Look, Republicans many times do the same thing as well. But I'll give Republicans props that they'll talk a big game during election season, but when they're elected, they at least try to do half of what they say they were going to do. Democrats, I give it like 10%, maybe 10%. They'll do one little thing and then basically try to enrich themselves and their buddies.
Exactly. Senorita Annette, real quick, you can comment on that, but I'd like to get your thought on, is her exit ushering in the new Socialist Democrat wing of AOC, Mamdani, the Squad? Is this their opening? At least, I mean, the Senate's different, but at least to take over the House?
I totally think so. I actually totally think so. And I just wanted to say, in terms of her legacy, I watched a really interesting interview with Tucker Carlson where he was talking about women in power. And his argument was that someone was saying, oh, well, get the men out of power and get women in power and it'll be so much better. And his argument was women are more vicious in power than men could ever be. So no, I thought it was an interesting thing. And I thought to myself, I think Nancy Pelosi is an example of what the worst outcome is of a woman in power, where she loses her humanity. So that is, but yeah, she's exiting. Great. But what is going to be ushered in?
Right.
So to your point, now I guess that's a good segue to what happened in New York.
Right. So let's close this out. As the curtain falls, people, remember, the shadow left behind is where the real story begins. So what happens when the most powerful woman in Congress walks away? And kudos to any woman to be called the most powerful woman, Miss Nancy Pelosi, but you're leaving behind a mountain of controversy. You exit with 120 million. Failed impeachments, thank God. And as a key driver of Biden's most disputed policies, not looking good. And you were and are one of politics' most polarizing figures. Your record is riddled with contradictions, COVID rule breaking, Confederate memorials, climate hypocrisy, and insider deals, undermining faith in the system. With your exit, new power rivalries will begin, and the public will ask, are DC's power brokers untouchable, or is there a reckoning at hand? Spoiler alert, they're untouchable. Your shadow will haunt the next chapter, but life will move on. All right, people, let's move on to the big story of the night. 2025 election, the GOP collapses, ballot failures, and the strategic crisis. So what happens when the floodwaters rise? As I said to open the show, well, a lot of bad things, it seems like. The New York City turnout, I talked about it in the opening. Zoran Mamdani, self-described socialist, he won the mayoral race with a 50.4% number. He beat Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. And Curtis Sliwa, by the way, is going to go from a hero to hated by everybody outside of the Mamdani's wing, which he doesn't care for as it is with his 7%. Now, supposedly this was the highest voter turnout in 5 decades. He campaigned on typical socialist tropes, affordability, higher corporate taxes, and justice issues that we saw fail with Obama, that we saw fail with Biden, that we have seen fail throughout all of history. Why? We're not educating our kids anymore. We're teaching them all about racial justice. Did you know, I was told today, or saw an interview today, they don't even talk about 9/11 in New York City schools. So when you have a younger generation that wasn't even born or doesn't even realize what's happening, you're going to get over and over and over socialism. It just wasn't tried by the right people. Your thoughts here. We'll start off with Mr. G-Man here. Damn it, you came late and I'm rewarding you. You get a first word here on the thoughts on the New York City Mamdani.
Yeah, so you started with me because I kind of look like him, right?
Ooh! As
I
say
can
the
say
70s,
that. You didn't say it, but I
they say
said
the
it.
70s. Burn.
Look, so Mamdani did not run against the Republicans. He didn't even run against the Democrats.
Yeah.
He ran against capitalism, and he won.
Right.
And so that's what's concerning to me. And like I just talked about with Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats who talk a big game but don't do what their core base really wants them to do, is, like we said, communist and socialist ideals, right? Marxist ideals, where you, uh, and Mamdani talked about it, you take power over the means of production and bend it to your will for the good of the people, which we have seen over and over and over again never ends up being for the good of the people, right? It sounds good to say, let's take the farm from the farmer and redistribute the food so people don't get, don't go hungry or whatnot. But here's what happens: the people who are now in charge of the farm have no idea how to farm, and then food doesn't grow, and then the people end up starving, right? So you extrapolate that out to what's going to happen in New York now if he's successful, which I don't think he will be. I don't think a lot of people knew what they were voting for, except for a guy with a nice beard and a nice smile. But I don't think
Uh,
they know what they voted for. And the moment he tries to do something, they're going to say, "Wait a minute, we don't like this." But let's say he is successful, then let's think about all the financial firms, all the rich people. The hedge fund managers. They're going to say, "Wait a minute, can I do this from Florida instead?" And escape the tax base, I should say, Mamdani is going to lose his tax base as they all move down to Florida, and he's not going to be able to implement his agenda. And so, I think this will be an interesting scene over there. But I will say, like you said earlier, the party of the Democrats is now the party of AOC, Mamdani, and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton, that group doesn't stand a chance of rigging the primaries in 3 years to try to, get the presidency. I think it's going to be someone like AOC who gets it.
Right. And real quick, before I go to the teacher and the mother who has kids living in New York, G brought up a good point. That's true. Most people will hear G sit there and say, "Yeah, you take it from the farmers, and people don't know how to farm." They're like, "Nah, that's not it." We have this American mentality that doesn't happen. It does. South Africa is a major example. Their whole agriculture industry is literally destroyed because they took, and it was a racial game there. They took the money from all the they took the farms from all the white farmers, gave it to all indigenous Black Africans there, and they're begging the white farmers to come back and to help run. And the white farmers saying, "You want us to come back and work the land you took from us? No thanks." And they are in dire straits right now. That was one of the topics when they came over to here to Trump a few months back. They wanted money to help subsidize their agriculture side. So this question here is for David and Annette. And once again to the audience, Annette has children living in New York City. I say that only because she's brought it up. And
Yep.
David, you're a former teacher. We've lost the kids. Every child grows up liberal, but these kids are way out there. One, what are your thoughts as to why we've lost the younger generation, and how can we get them back? Because right now, everybody under 29 literally voted for Mom Donnie. I'm going to go with the guest last, so we're going to go with Annette first, since you have kids in New York. Then I want to hear David's point.
Oh, okay. I was getting ready for David to go. Well, I think this is how you just deconstruct a city. He's going to say people are going to have help for their children from the time they're 6 weeks old to the time they're 5 years old. I mean, the free buses, the rent freeze, where people then aren't going to want to be, I guess, building and having more places to live in New York City because it's not going to be an attractive place for them to do that. So what actually is a result of that? But why does it appeal? Now, this is a very interesting thing because I have 5 daughters, as you guys know. And why does it appeal to my one daughter who lives in New York City? Why did she vote for him? And why did all of her friends vote for him? Which was like a long argument in our family text when all this was happening. Because she has an interesting sense of fairness, I think, that she thinks things are unfair. And her friends think things are unfair. And somehow he's going to usher in some sort of like balance and fairness and more of an equitable life for people that are struggling to make it in New York City. So I think you have to look at that and think that it's very interesting. I mean, honestly, I try to approach it instead of being angry with my daughter. Is like, what do you like about him? What do you think it's going to be like if these things are all free? What do you think the buses are going to be like if people are living on them? Because there's not really a fare anymore. If all the buses are free, What are they going to get off? I mean, I guess they can just keep on riding around all day and night. I don't know. I mean, how will it play out? And I think it'll be interesting, but what did they want really from it? A lot of them, I think, wanted to felt like he was going to make things more fair for them. And so there must be a sense that things are not fair.
Right. And that you probably get surprised, but there is an issue with affordability for the younger generation. They can't afford a home. They live in New York City. Before I met you, Annette, I remember a couple years ago reading a story like it used to be when we were kids, 3 people in an apartment. It's like, no, you can't even get 3 people. You're like cattle trying to get people together to live in New York City. Nothing is affordable. And this is a product of both the Democrat and Republican elites. And you keep sourcing jobs out overseas, your profits get fatter, you become, we're not talking millionaires the first billionaire was in 1977, right after the gold standard left, and he was the guy who owned the Getty Oil, not the Getty Oil, but the other one.
Standard?
No, Standard was JP Morgan, but he was the first billionaire. Now billionaires are like every hedge fund manager. What I'm saying is the gap is there. So they have legit complaints. The problem is history has shown socialism does not work. And I think part of the problem is kids don't pay their own bills or are subsidized. So they don't understand the ethics of work. That's your money. So they're okay with taking other people's money. All this does to me is going to produce laziness, but that doesn't matter. We have to address the fact that we have to make life affordable for the average up and coming American. They're trying to do away with the American dream of owning a house. They've taught kids, well, why do I need a house? Well, when you get in the 60s and 70s, that's likely your best investment to retirement. David, you yourself as a teacher, lay it on us, brother. What are your thoughts from a teacher's perspective?
Well, we'll start with the teacher's perspective, because then I do have some thoughts about why I think he really won. First off, I mean, our schools are a mess. I mean, I taught in the inner city in New Haven, Connecticut. And, a lot of my colleagues felt that it was more of their job to not necessarily make sure everybody was learning math, arithmetic, reading, writing. This was when Trump was running the first time. It was pushing political agendas, and that's a problem. Also, so our kids are just, it's not that they're all liberal at heart and this and that. It's they don't really understand. I mean, most kids don't understand anything about how our government works anymore. I mean, I had kids that were seniors and juniors. They couldn't even write me an opening paragraph of an essay. So it's not, but they're just, then you hear somebody like Mandami. This is the big issue. This is why I think he won. And it's not so much that he was railing against capitalism. It's the fact that listen, it shows up in every polling. You talk to Mark Mitchell, Rasmussen, you talk to Rich Barris, great pollster. The issues on people's minds right now are affordability, inflation, cost of living, and healthcare stuff, affording these things. The election of Trump in 2024 was about the fact that it was a referendum on the ruling class, on our government, and our elected leaders. They elected Trump because they wanted a wrecking ball to go into Washington and tear it all down. So populism is coming to this country one way or another, and Republicans in Washington are going to have to decide how do they want it to come, because if they're going to continue to refuse to implement Trumpism and slow walk things, then you're going to get populism in the form of left-wing populism, which is people like Mandami, who are going to talk about these issues. Unfortunately, what's happened in the first year of the administration, Republicans have been focused on the wrong things. And even Trump has spent way too much time on foreign affairs. We're not debating the merits of supporting or not supporting Israel. It's the fact that when people cannot afford a home, when people cannot pay their bills, when you go to Walmart and you buy 5 items and it's over $100, okay, they don't care. They don't want to hear about Ukraine. They don't want to hear about Israel every day. They want to know what you're going to do to help them. And so when someone like Mandami comes along and actually talks about those issues instead of telling everybody, I mean, listen, what was Cuomo's message? First of all, Cuomo had no business being in the race because Cuomo should be in prison, in my point of view, for everything he did. But all Cuomo was running around talking about, he's a Muslim and talking about Jews and going to these Jews. He had this big Jewish rally event thing. And I'm not talking about not liking Jews. It's the fact that you're not talking about the issues that are motivating people, especially young people. Young people cannot afford a home. They're coming out of college with massive amounts of debt. Okay, they can't get jobs. And they don't want to hear about that stuff on the campaign trail. They want to know how you are going to make life more affordable. And quite frankly, this is why Republicans got beat down across the country, because we weren't talking about these issues. I can't tell you how many text messages and emails I get a day from Republicans that are all about Israel and this kind of thing. And listen, I support Israel. I want Israel to succeed. I want Israel to prosper. But people don't want to hear about that right now when they cannot pay their bills. They're going to gravitate to who's talking about the issues that matter. And we have done a poor job as Republicans, as conservatives, about one, handling this stuff. We have controls of both House of Congress right now, and they don't want to pass anything, quite frankly. They really don't.
David,
Can
let
I
me give you a little
ask you a quick
pushback. Let me
question?
give you a little pushback here, David, and then
And then
I can go. Israel was the whole thing for the last 2.5, 3 years, whether it was on the college campuses, whether it was the whole Muslim faction from New York City, from Mamdani. And in Trump's defense, I didn't hear anything about he's overseas too much until this week when the shellacking took place. He has solved eight conflicts. Hold on, 8 conflicts. The only one we hear about is Israel all the time. Nobody can tell you what the 7 other. Well, hold on. He has to solve. But my point is this is a product of Democrats and the mainstream media over and over. Trump talks about Israel when it comes up. What I'm hearing is we can't control the narrative. We can't create the true narrative and talk to the kids, because if you talk to a kid, they hate Israel right now. You know.
Well, when you listen, it's not necessarily Trump's fault. It's people in his own party. I mean, the only thing Lindsey Graham goes on and talks about is bombing other countries on Fox News. Randy Fine, every day, it's all he's talking about is foreign wars and stuff. Okay, so Trump's own party is stepping on his message. The problem isn't it is a perception issue. It's a poor messaging issue, but Republicans are creating the poor messaging issue in themselves. They already know the media is not going to be on their side. They have to focus on what they're doing. They're not talking to people about the issues that matter. You cannot spend all this time talking about stuff that's going on overseas. Listen, America first. That's why people voted en masse for Trump. A lot of independents, a lot of fed up youngsters. Trump did record numbers with young voters, minority voters, because they felt like, I need somebody who's just going to tune all that stuff out. We've lived with all this foreign stuff for decades. We just went through 20 years in the Middle East. I got to have somebody in there who's going to say, I'm putting you guys first. And they're frustrated right now. They're still feeling left behind. And quite frankly, I do believe this is our last chance, because a lot of people, like I said, when I knocked on doors, told me they've lost faith. And they took a leap of faith in 2024. And if we continue to turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to them, they're never going to come back. They're never going to trust us again. And unfortunately, like I said, you're going to get left-wing radical populism. And like we said, you said with the schools, most people don't really understand the economics of this stuff. They just hear free, 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 free. And when you get that, unfortunately, like there's an age-old saying, right? You can vote your way into socialism and communism, but you got to shoot your way out. And so people get desperate. I mean, that's what happens. And so,
David, I have a quick question for you. Don't you find it interesting that the exit polls showed that it was the educated kids, bachelor's degree and above, that were overwhelmingly voting for him? The people that you're talking about, you were saying earlier, and when you're in New Haven, like a lot of people were not very educated.
I mean, we have there's a highly educated philosopher class in this country that are getting these degrees and all these worthless things that are just being fed all these lies and stuff and thinking.
And they don't have jobs.
Frankly, a lot of them are younger. They're not the ones that are the billionaires. So they're like, oh yeah, let's take the billionaires. They're very intelligent, but they don't have the big jobs. So they're just thinking they're not going to pay. It's just a whole disconnect with everything. I mean, everything sounds great when you promise the world and then you're not going to be able to deliver. But when people are desperate and people want homes and also what does socialism and communists do? It's always built on class struggle. So you have to create between classes. So when people, like you were talking about your daughter with this unfairness, when you constantly talk about how unfair things are, it gets people angry, it gets people emotional. And that's one thing Democrats, leftists are good at. They play on emotions. They get people riled up. They get their followers extremely angry, and it motivates people. And we just have to do a better job as Republicans of staying on the message and kind of accepting that maybe it's not about what we want at the moment as Congress people. It's about what our voters want. And many of these people go to DC, and quite frankly, they care more about the biggest problem on the Republican side is the donors. We have a different type of donor class than the Democratic Party has. And I've seen this firsthand from running. See, you have George Soros. He will blow millions, probably billions of dollars now on the cause. Okay, Republican donors tend to have historically have a different thing. They're a lot of times donating because they want to buy access to a candidate when they get into office. They want a favor. They want this and that done. So a lot of Republicans go to DC and they forget that they forget that it's for the people who voted for you, not for your donors. And so
Right.
that's a big problem that we have to deal with in the Republican Party, and we're doing a poor job at it right now.
Okay, so real quick, Annette, I can answer the question in terms of the college-educated kids that voted for him. Well, one thing David didn't mention, I tried to toss in there, is a lot of these kids get these liberal arts degrees and they're not qualified for anything, and they got $200,000 of debt. I made it a point, and I got in an argument with my boss about 20 years ago now, before I started my own business, about a hire, and she was a liberal arts, and she liked her, and I liked the business guy. I go, she doesn't even know the basics of business. We need somebody to come here and hit the ground running. At least with the business degree, they understand the concept of business. She's doing this, I want to help these people, blah, blah, but she has no clue. And that's part of the problem. But here's the real issue in terms to address your question. In socialism and communism, as David says, it's a class war. You have the educated who look at the working class, because the working class don't care for socialism, because they quickly realize, I'm doing all the work. But there's a ruling class, the college educated, just enough to think, there's a term for it, I can't remember, but we're the ones who will be controlling and dispersing of everything. They view themselves as they'll be as part of the upper echelon, the college educated. Why? Because they're superior to that dumb working class Joe who needs me to take care of him. The soft bigotry of socialism, but that's how they view themselves. So all these kids, rich little kids or upper income little kids helping Mamdani, they don't see themselves as part of the working class. They see themselves separate from the working class. I saw this as an American citizen who was Panamanian, but born and raised living amongst the Panamanians all the time. There was a certain class who just viewed themselves superior, and they didn't even realize it. So to answer your question, that's how they see themselves. And they want to save the world. And they believe they have the virtue, as mom and dad pay for everything, but they have the virtue to determine where the best money or where the money will be best suited, not realizing we now have a means to flee to other countries, billionaires do. Now that said, let's move on here. And Ms. Annette, I want to stick with you, and I want to stick on top of the GOP. The GOP has lost the women's vote. As a woman, talk to us, baby. Talk to us. And while you do that, I'm going to put up a post here showing that number. Go ahead.
I mean, they have, and overwhelmingly. And I don't think I'm looking at that really quickly. Yeah, I could not believe that. I saw those polls. William, I'm a little bit out of touch in this way because I'm a very sort of traditional conservative person. I'm not even necessarily sure that I'm like all MAGA. I'm really just more like conservative based on my religious beliefs about why we're here on earth and what we're doing here as human beings made in the image and likeness of God and all of that. And that just sort of ends up putting me in the conservative camp most of the time. But I don't know. I think the young girls today are completely lost. And I think that somehow this idea of feminism has thrown them really way off track, which also, if you look at it, they're the most unhappy young women right now that I've ever seen. There's also horrible numbers about their mental health and horrible numbers about their being promiscuous and horrible numbers about them not marrying and finding partners and love and meaning and purpose. So it's not going so good for them right now, the way I see it.
Right. So real quick on that point, I just heard today, I can't remember where, podcast, maybe Tucker or Megyn Kelly or one of those. I don't listen to Tucker. She was a guest. He brought up a good point. It's like Norway, I think he said, Denmark or Norway, one of the two, is like it has like socialism. It is the most prescribed antidepressant country in the world. And so you bring up a good point. I think part of it is what I call the feminazism. I grew up believing feminism. I had 3 strong sisters, a strong mother. I have a strong wife. Feminism is you get to make the choice. It's your choice. And that's transmorphed into, if you're not a career woman, you're not a feminist. If you're not burning your bra, you're not a feminist. If you're not anti-man, you're not a feminist. Oh, you want to be a mother and stay home and raise your kids? Oh, you are not a feminist. Woman,
Yeah.
get out here. That's what has transformed. David, don't want to put the men in the spot here, but your thoughts real quick.
Well, being somebody who's taught in high school and stuff, I understand the numbers with young women. I think a lot of it has to do with the fear mongering with the abortion stuff. And like you said, this movement, like, oh, if you're a woman, you can't vote Republican because they want to take away your rights. A lot of misinformation around that. But I also think it's youth in general. There's a really unfortunate trend in this country where we no longer believe or preach kind of self-accountability for anybody's actions. And so we're teaching a lot of people that you should be able to go out and do whatever you want and not face a consequence for it or not get credit for it, or it's somebody else's fault. And this was one of my biggest qualms teaching. I came from an environment where I was blessed enough. My parents sent me to Catholic school all the way through college. And, if I didn't do my homework and I do this, that was on me. That was my fault. And, I had the accountability there. And I was being told as a teacher, well, you cannot penalize a kid for not showing up for class, for not doing their work, or for swearing at you. And so we're teaching a lot of our youth that, well, you don't have to be held accountable. It's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. It's the boss's fault. It's the store's fault. It's the Republican guy's fault. It's this kind of person's fault. It's nobody's fault but your own. And so there's this, unfortunately, that feeling permeates right now through our youth, and it's bad. I mean, it's just really unfortunate, and that's why we're seeing such terrible test scores in schools.
Exactly.
A lot of people getting hurt, and so with the women, a lot of it has to do with misinformation they're being fed about. Oh my God, they want to take away all your rights, and really, it's totally untrue. And quite frankly, this is an area where Republicans have a problem, not just on abortion, but in many, many issues. The fear of talking about the topic. They are told, even from consultants and leaders, just don't talk about it, avoid it. When you have to push back, because the media, you cannot let the other side dictate the conversation. And I
like
think
the abortion.
90+% of Republicans would agree that it's okay for abortion. I mean, I am Catholic. I believe in, I don't believe in abortion. I think, I believe in pro-life. But I think everyone would agree in the three exceptions right now: life, protect the life of the mother, rape, and incest. And also knowing that that's 0.02% of cases actually fall in the category of rape and incest. And so Republicans do not push back. Instead, they put their tails between their legs and they let the Democrats and the media dictate the issue and scare people. Like I said in the previous segment, fear is a powerful motivator. So when you're telling young women, young kids who are very impressionable, they'll believe. Listen, I'm in a school, these kids, you'd be surprised what you can get even high schoolers to believe when you say it. And so when you're telling them things like, oh, Republicans want to control your body and they want to take away this, they believe that and they get scared.
Or it's going to be the Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, they get scared. They get believed, right? Because the teacher is supposed to be telling them the truth. And that's what they're told. Oh, listen to your teacher, believe your teacher. I mean, I had colleagues in the classroom. I sat there and watched colleagues tell students, write me an essay why Mike Pence hates Muslims, and this kind of stuff. And kids believe this stuff. So it's just like, once again, we're never going to have the media on our side. So it's always going to be an uphill battle for conservatives to control the narrative. But if you don't even try, that's when things spiral and that's when you lose control. And so I've been on the side where I've heard consultants tell people, do not talk about that issue. I mean, there have been memos people have talked about it from when Kevin McCarthy ran the NRCC. And even now they tell during the whole Roe v. Wade, don't talk about the abortion issue. Just let it go. No, that's not how you approach a problem. You have to make sure wherever you can, however you can, get your point out there and make sure the facts are out there. And so they scare people with those. I can't tell you how many times they hear, oh, you want kids to have their rapist's baby. And I'm like, no, I don't. First of all, I support the 3 exemptions. 2, it's also 0.02% of cases. So you're talking about something that's extremely rare. And in the situation when it does occur, if the woman does want to have it, I will allow for that exception. And I think most states, I think every state allows for that.
Right. So what you're saying is communication.
It's disinformation, yes. And it's our unwillingness to try to touch hot button issues.
All right. So let's move on to our final topic here. We'll spend a few minutes on it here. It rears its ugly head again. I've talked about it since day one. And because I now run the show here, I'm more discreet in how I speak. There's discrepancies with the ballot. In New Jersey, they saw over 500,000 more votes than any other year in history, and nearly all of them went to Democrats. Mail-in, no voter ID, mail-in ballots. The Democrats blew out the numbers to the point people are like, "Whoa!" People who analyze this are like, "Whoa!" Now those numbers are unheard of, especially in an off-year cycle. In Pennsylvania, 75,000 voters were disenfranchised. They had to use provisional ballots, and then there weren't enough, and some went home in frustration, so they didn't get their chance to participate. This is cropping up all over. Gee, your thoughts, and I'm going to put some graphics on the table on the screen for the audience.
Yeah, so I voted here in California. For some reason, we did not get our mail-in ballot, so I thought that was suspicious, but maybe not. I'm reading too much into it. So I went to the local polling place. This is San Diego, California, and stood in line. It was 7:40. Polls closed at 8. I was still in line past 8. I get the notification Prop 50 passes, and I'm sitting there going, okay, this is the only thing I'm voting for. I stood in line for another 25 minutes just in case it was like off by one vote. I didn't want to be that one vote, right? So I sit down, and the lady says, "What's your name?" Types in my name and says, "Here's your ballot." I didn't have to prove who I was. I just gave her my name. I gave her my address, and I went and voted. And I'm sitting there going, "This is really easy." I mean, if I wanted to go to every balloting place around and just say, "Well, this is my name, and I'm here to vote," I could have done it. I think the only way they can match that is by the signature that you put down that they say they have on file. But if you just do chicken scratch, I mean, you run a really good chance of just comparing chicken scratch to chicken scratch and say close enough. So, like, I don't know how to quantify it. I just know it's easy if you wanted to. Now, just to be clear, I voted for myself legitimately, but it's really easy to just vote for someone else and just say, "Hey,
Exactly.
I'm Bob Smith," or if Annette tried to go up and say I'm G Mangani, that would be maybe a little difficult. But other than that, other than something obvious, it's really easy. So, where there's one, like we said last week, where there's one case of fraud, there could be a million. You just don't
Right.
know. And
Right.
once a vote's put in the system and you found the fraud, I think we talked about it last year. I believe it was Michigan. Some guy was caught illegally voting because he was
Chinese
not.
national.
Yeah. And there's no way to take his vote out and say, "Oh, well, let's subtract that vote," because which vote do you take out? Is it the one for Kamala or is it the one for Trump? Who did he
Right.
vote for? And he could lie and say, "Well, I voted for Trump, so now -1 for Trump," when he really voted for Kamala. So now you just change the margin two in Kamala's favor, right? Because he voted for Kamala and lied about voting for Trump. So until we get voter ID and you show up to the poll and you say, "This is my picture, this is who I am," there's no way to really clamp down on it.
Right. Okay. I want to show some of these here. Then I want to get Annette's comment, David's comment, and then I want to show the map of Prop 50 and get your guys' final comments. I want to wrap this up in the next 5 to 6 minutes, just to give you a heads up. So this is an individual, a friend in Colorado, who hasn't been a legal resident for over a decade. These are all the ballots this individual has gotten over the years. This one here is from Kira Davis. I don't know if any of you know her. She's a well-known California former state writer, but 3,100 voters with no name and addresses, 114,000 duplicate registrants, 3 million people voted prior to being new registers, 1.4 million invalid or illegible registrations. And that's just the beginning, she says. And they were sued and they had a settlement and they still took their sweet time to clean the roads out. LA did. Here's one this is New Jersey. Last 50 years, they have a track record of what they roughly get. Somehow there's now over 3 million voters and a Democrat get nearly 2 million of those votes. And the reason I bring this up is mail-in ballot makes this all happen. And my issue is it doesn't matter what we have talked about for the last hour. if we don't get mail-in balloting and get voter ID back in, we are a third world country. We are the countries we would laugh at when we were children. Annette, your quick thoughts on that, then David, and then I want to move to the map to Prop 50.
Just quick, I'll say last night I was at an event with Tony Strickland. He's a senator in California. And that's all he was talking about in his talking points was about how they've got a coalition now and they're trying really hard to push forth this voter ID. And so I actually started to feel like, hey, they've got some people and they've got some working together to get this accomplished. It gave me a little bit of hope. I sort of agree with you. What are we going to do if we can't get? What are we going? I don't even know where to begin. Like you said, it's an immense problem. Sorry, go ahead,
David. Your point.
Well, I do agree. I mean, mail-in balloting there is obviously it's ripe for fraud, especially when it's unsolicited. So there probably are some votes in there that are definitely not kosher votes. But there was also something that people are upset about the results that people are ignoring. And I will say this: there was New Jersey in 2024 did move very right, and they moved right towards Trump. I mean, he made it a lot closer than anybody saw coming. The problem here that happened in New Jersey that people are discounting, also in Virginia, the votes were racked up in urban areas. What happened in the week and a half to 2 weeks up until Election Day? A couple of key things. One, the SNAP benefit thing. A lot of scared people out there really did motivate people. I know people don't want to hear it, but yeah, that was a factor. But also, the Democrats called in the big gun. And the big gun is Barack Obama. And he went and did rallies in key areas in New Jersey and Virginia. And quite frankly, he rallied up the radical elements of the party and got them out there to vote. And Republicans did not counter. The Jack Citarelli campaign. Citarelli has not been a fan of Trump in the past. I think I'm saying his name wrong, even though he's Italian, so he's going to have to forgive me. I'm not a great Italian, but in terms of that kind of stuff. But he did not seek and probably wouldn't have wanted President Trump to come because consultants in the Republican class do not get their own coalition. Working class voters, independent leaning voters voted for Trumpism because it's not traditional conservatism. It promises to deal with the issues that are concerns to them. And you had to counter somebody like Barack Obama, who comes out there and talks about. So I'm sure there was a lot of funny business. Mail-in balloting should not happen, especially like we do it in California where it's unsolicited. It's totally ridiculous. But we can't ignore that. Yeah, I mean, they brought out the big gun. They knew they were in trouble, especially in New Jersey, where they felt it was getting too close for comfort. And he did a good job bringing those people out. I mean, he does a good job doing nonsense. He's a good bullshitter. He always has.
So I disagree on Obama completely. Every election that he's come out, he's failed. So this one would have been different. But I will agree on the snap and the shutdown and the No Kings rally being a get out the vote movement. So I can see that, but we're still seeing unheard of numbers.
Well, in the urban areas, Obama still does have some pull, especially in a place like Virginia.
But not at
you
the
have to remember, Virginia is a lot different state now. It's a lot of It's a lot of DC suburbanites that love Obama, that glorify Obama.
That's not Obama. That's the federal shutdown. That whole blue area in Virginia.
Yeah,
all that
we just didn't counter. I mean, they could have had Trump out in Wildwood, New Jersey again, have another 100,000.
Trump wouldn't have gone out, don't you think? Trump would not have gone out. I mean, a better example than...
If he was asked, I think he would have. He wasn't asked.
I don't think so. Better example than Citarelli was Sears, who campaiged against Trump, who had...
Sears is a terrible candidate.
But the point is still the same, though.
Really bad candidate.
The downside for these blue Republicans that always comes to bite them in the butt they will demagogue the top candidate to try to get that vote. It always backfires.
And there's a reason we call them, I mean, I'm from Connecticut originally, so there's a reason you get what's called New England Republicans, and they're very generic and they're scared to push buttons because they're told you live in a blue state. I dealt with that in CA13 where people told me I was crazy, that no Republican could ever win because it was such a D advantage on paper. And I said, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. Here's the polling data. These people want to vote Republican. You're not talking to them. You're not reaching them. They're not voting for you because you're running these bullcrap California Republican, New England Republican campaigns that do not move the needle with voters anymore. It's not 1984. It's not 1994 anymore. We have to adapt our movement to changing times in a changing country. Those coalitions that elected George Bush, that elected Ronald Reagan, that elected the first Bush, they don't exist anymore because the country doesn't look like that anymore. It's a far different country today. And if we don't adapt, this is going to keep happening. And fortunately, there's a lot of stubborn people making the calls at the RNC.
And that's why
so true. That is so true.
Exactly. And that's why I feel the mail-in, those ballots, there's no chain of custody. That's
and I mean, the mail-in stuff in California is just
it's proven. Look, again, us third worlders come from a country with dictator. We've seen this. This playbook is as old as time itself. And Americans think it just doesn't happen in our country.
Dude, that's why it's so funny, because you hear, sorry, I know you want to end up soon, but you hear these other countries, right, talking about how, you had these other world leaders in places like France, Macron in France, talking about, Republicans, Trump, he wants to disenfranchise people, especially around 2024. Those countries have voter ID laws, okay? Those countries, you do have to show it. So it's so funny that it's just such a ridiculous thing. It really is. And quite frankly, every illegal, the biggest form of voter fraud is illegally voting, because every illegal vote cancels out a legally cast ballot. And I don't have a problem with a Democrat winning if I know it's fair. The problem is when they don't believe it's fair, and when you don't know who the heck is casting these ballots. So you're not doing yourself any favors. You're just making people skeptical of the system.
Okay. So real quick, I want to show the audience, as we talked. Luckily, we talked about it in the beginning. The Prop 50. Here is a new breakdown for California. This is what we failed to protect us from. That is the new map, the existing map on the side, and that was a growing red. This is what we are. It's not a guarantee, but this is what we're most likely to get. Real quick, G, 30 seconds. Give me your thoughts on the proposed map there.
Talking about disenfranchising people, I mean, there are no words. I did listen to Daryl Issa yesterday. We had a meeting, not him and I personally, but I was at a meeting, and he was just saying, like, look, this is now went from a R plus something to a D plus 4. Once people find out what just happened, there'll be enough people in the middle saying, oh, we're going to overturn this by getting out and voting for Daryl Issa. So I believe that will happen. So that little red spot at the bottom, I think that will stay red, although it's a different lines down there. But yeah, it's a travesty what happened. And people are saying, well, this is happening in other states. But again, if you look at the Northeast, they have gerrymandering there. It's 40% Republican, is solid red congressionally. So yeah, you can't tell me Democrats are just like innocent in this and Republicans started this. Republicans are basically answering to what they have done. And now the Democrats are doing that here. But I will tell you, in those other states, at least it's still a popular, it's in the hands of independent people. Whereas here now in California, it's in the hands of Gavin Newsom, who wants to run for president in a couple of years. So hopefully it will come back to bite him in the butt next year when he launches his campaign. We'll see. There will be plenty of Democrats who are also running who will point to this and say, look, you took the rights of the people away from them, at least temporarily. And hopefully they'll use that as a wedge tool to win the primary.
Right. So, Annette, part of the reason, real quick, Texas did their redistricting was because of racial gerrymandering. They were purposely creating black districts to vote fully Democrat, and the courts upheld that. They said, yes, that's what's happening, including the Supreme Court. This is a power play here. Now, and G's right. Both sides do it. What's your thoughts, though, when you see that congressional map, the existing versus what we're going to get?
Okay, well, honestly, I really loved what David just said, because I think what's happening with the Republican Party in California is we're not changing the game enough. And we are a little bit afraid, I also agree, to talk about some of the things that are the touchiest subjects for human beings, but people want to hear you talk about those things. And I think we need to put out different talking points, different kind of candidates. John Franklin just said it the other day. He's like, this is a little bit depressing. It really is. But what are we going to do? We still have to fight. And how do you fight, though? He said, because on the issues, and on many of the issues, we win on the issues. But do we get the message out? Do people understand the message? Are they connecting to what our values are? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of...
Well, yeah, but maybe if John Franklin wouldn't support some of these squishy candidates, this is what burns me up.
That's the problem.
These guys, John Franklin says, I'm not picking on you and that. It's just that triggers me.
No,
he was running the new majority. here in San Diego.
Yes, he is.
And
Yeah,
all they do is back squishes. One squish. That's it. The kids and family and the wife probably get sick of it. Stop squishing, John. And so they always say this. And I'm sorry, and I apologize.
No,
that's not towards you, David. You get the second to last word. I have the final one.
Yeah, you're right on that. These people, they talk a big game, and then when I decided to run against Kevin McCarthy, I was encouraged by a lot of people. Then they don't want to help, and they back squishy candidates. And so, but the big thing with this, with the redistricting, I look at the map and I see the new ones. It's a joke. I'm glad you brought up the Texas thing, because Gavin Newsom is obviously lying to people, and then once again, the media is controlling the narrative. And quite frankly, Republicans haven't done a good enough job telling people what happened in Texas. You're right. The courts ordered the districts to be redrawn. It was a decision by the Texas Supreme Court. So it's not like Republicans just said, we want to make Republican districts. The court said, you got to redraw the districts. And then with this, the whole thing's a sham to begin with, because this whole notion of independent redistricting committees. So I was actually a candidate when this was being drawn, and I had to live through this because I didn't know where I was going to run, right? We had to see what the districts were going to look like, what was going to happen. It's not an independent commission. The woman who ran the commission was a liberal activist professor from a college, from a state college. Okay, these commissions are not independent. The districts were already gerrymandered. So Gavin Newsom would talk about unfairness like once. This district's the original map, the one we're losing, despite the fact that there were 8 Republicans in it, there should have been way more. All they did was carve up the Central Valley and put it all into Kevin McCarthy's district. They literally put an arm into Kern County in Tulare to take out the Republicans, so Jim Costa's seat would stay Democratic, and make Kevin McCarthy's like an R+50 district, because they needed to do that to gerrymander. So now you're just getting a further gerrymandered map. Okay. And so the reason they do these independent commissions and then stack them with Democratic activists is because it's very hard, because on paper it's an independent commission, right? So when you go to the courts, it's hard to challenge it because they're going to say, oh, it's independent, right? So it's a joke to begin with. Our maps last year weren't fair to start with. Democrats have been gerrymandering all over the country, especially in the Northeast, where you have states like Connecticut, Rhode Island. You have 0 Republicans represented in any of those states. There hasn't been a Republican elected to the House of Representatives from New England since 2006, I believe. 2006. I think they all got kicked out during that terrible election, that midterm there, George Bush's second midterm. And there hasn't been a single Republican representative since then, despite the fact they get 45% of the vote in some of these places. So these districts have, and those are done by the state legislature still, and most of, I think all those states still. So Democrats have been gerrymandering way longer than Republicans. Quite frankly, the 2020 census was rigged to begin with anyway. They fudged the numbers. And so that has come out. That has come out. With California was supposed to lose three seats in 2020, and they ended up playing with numbers and doing weird counting things where California lost 1. And states like North Carolina and Texas and Florida were supposed to gain more. They ended up gaining less than they were supposed to. So it's already been screwed over to begin with. Republicans got the short end of the straw in this battle. But once again, our messaging has just been off. We have to do better. And then there's just the civics aspect of it. As being a teacher, unfortunately, a lot of people don't even understand that districts get redrawn every 10 years. And so that's just a product of a poor education system. And a lot of that's by design, right? Because when you aren't actually educating people and you're not teaching them these things, you can basically tell them whatever you want and get them to believe it. So so go ahead. Thank you.
No, I'm just saying, all of you guys are right. And David, what David said is right. Reports have come out over the last month talking about the census, how corrupt it was. Now they're officially saying yes. And that's one of the reasons Trump is pushing for a new census. The other thing is we are forced into these battles of redistricting and gerrymandering because the Democrats demagogue and they build their base off of hate and emotion, and they grow their base. They create long-term plans to take over and turn red into purple. So it doesn't matter what they gerrymander. This is just a shortcut to get to their long-term. The real problem are Republicans, squishy candidates, and they don't go into blue districts. And now they're even more scared to go into blue districts because of violence, which is what Democrats want. Again, people, this is a third world game plan, a strategy. We've seen it over and over. The best way to counter this is for Issa, and God bless him, take your 70-plus-year-old tail and go to the blue district and talk to them directly. Carl DeMaio, who is loathed as much as he's supported, he goes and he talks to the people. That's why he should. It doesn't matter what you think of him. That's why he shellacked Andrew Hayes, who I would call a political friend, who I liked. But that's why, because he went to the people. He was in all these districts talking to the people. Our side never does squat. And then what David said about the donors is correct. Start freaking donating. Prop 50 failed for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is we just didn't have the money nor the war chest that the left had. And I don't care what people said. Oh, you can win without money. Yeah. Once it's like hitting the lottery. It's like hitting the lottery. You can win. You need money. David, you want to say something?
Can I say just one thing quick before I go on and let you go? Because you touched on something important. So when I was a teacher. I mean, I've lived in California now for almost 10 years. I was basically politically nobody who decided to run and get in with the Sharks. And so I was running in a seat against Jim Costa, who I'm sure you guys know Jim Costa. I mean, he hasn't done anything in his 40 years being in public service, but everybody said Republicans can't win there. And one of the things I said, you're fools. I have the data. You're not reaching these people. I made it a point for 2 years of my life. I gave up nobody even knew who the heck I was. So yes, I only got 15% of the vote. I earned every single point, every single vote of that 15% because I went to every event, downtown Fresno, places Republicans never went. I can't tell you, the Democrats were there and they looked at me with such weird eyes because no Republicans ever there before.
Mm-hmm.
And people told me, I went to cities like Castine, to Snelling, to these places, and people said nobody ever knocks on a door from the Republican Party. People couldn't believe that I was the candidate knocking on their door. Okay. Unfortunately, it took Kevin McCarthy picking a rich elite landowner farmer buddy, donor buddy, and pumping in $1 million to ruin all of my work and basically stealing all my data that I gave him. But the point is, I went and tried to do that. And we set the groundwork for showing people that Republicans are willing to go here, but a lot of them aren't. And that's unfortunate. A lot of the people,
go ahead, finish your thought.
Unfortunately, a lot of the people that are selected by party leadership and get the nod are from a different class than their voters. The Central Valley.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the poorest counties in California, yet the people that rule over the Central Valley are all from the upper class. So they're just so out of touch with these people. It's unfortunate. I feel bad. I wish I could have won because I still remember these people. Some of them cry to me that nobody ever comes and talks to them.
That's
and
right.
I think about how disappointed they are and how they were then and how they're probably even more disappointed now. So it's really unfortunate. But you're right. Republicans need stop being babies. Go out, do it. This is more, it's bigger than you. This is about saving our country. That's why I got involved. I have 2 kids now. One is my daughter just turned 1. My son just turned 3. And I do not want them living in a country run by people like Mondami, AOC, because I know how terrible that's going to be. And so we have to step up because we're going to lose it if we don't do a better job.
No, I agree. And the final caveat I'm going to give, and I'm going to close the show out. We're at 120 now, 130 now, is ground game. 2009, our ground game began to disappear because the consultant class took over. To give you guys an example, San Diego County was deep red. We had one of the strongest ground games. I forget, it was a dentist. She ran it. She won volunteer of the year, doing everything. The edict came down. We are going to go more towards technology. That was about the time Tony Kavaritz took over, and he let the ground game fall apart because it no longer was important in the grander. Without a ground game, you're never going to win. We are behind the 8 ball in so many ways. This is a harbinger of what is to come if we do not get our act together. I don't care that it was a blue state. We were competitive. We should have by all rights won a few of those elections. Jay Jones, who openly wished Republicans dead, including their kids, and never backed down from it until a half-hearted fake apology towards the end. If they're willing to elect him, despite that, that tells you where the Democrat Party is today and what we're up against. So these squishy leadership that we have here in California need to grow a spine or let the younger generation begin to take over. And with that, my friends, that is our show. We hope you enjoyed it. It was a pretty good show, pretty intense too. And do not forget, bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. Follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, Pandora under the handle Grumblings Media. And make sure you like and share this podcast and let us know what you think in the comments. Until next week, for Mr. David
It's all right. Don't worry about it. Thank you very much for having me.
And for Annette and G, we are out.